अस्सलामुअलैकुम बिस्मिल्लाहिर्रहमानिर्रहीम रब इश्रह ली सदरी व यस्सिर ली अमरी वाहलुल उक़दतम मिन लिसानी यफ़क़हू क़ौली रब्बि ज़िदनी इल्मा. Children, today we are here with AS Computer Science Paper 1, Chapter number 2, Communication. And we are doing a very quick revision for your exam so you can just know what you need to prepare. I hope that you have studied it well, but this class is only needed for a very quick recap. In this chapter, what we will study, what we will revise, the benefits of networking, the characteristics of a LAN local area network and WAN wide area network. We have to revise client server and peer-to-peer network models, the differences between the thick client and the thin client, the topologies, the four topologies that we have to be aware of. Then cloud computing. By the way, this chapter is composed of all the topics that are very, very important. So please be ready with your notebooks. So if you have anything to note down, then you can note it down. Differences between wired and wireless. Then the hardware that is needed to support LAN environment, the function of routers, a very important topic, Ethernet, bit streaming, and then in 2.2, we're going to talk about Internet and World Wide Web, hardware needed to support the Internet, IP addressing, including IPv4 and IPv6, along with public and private IP, and we will talk about the URLs. Lastly, we'll talk about the DNS. What is the role of DNS in the whole communication? Moving to the first, networking. By the way, this book is containing all the definitions, all the important definitions are given in the beginning, or the key terms are given in the beginning. So if you really want, you can access this part and use it for your quick revision, for your last quick revision. That these terminologies or these terms are very, very important for you people, especially for those who are facing problems in remembering the stuff. Now, moving to the first, networking, what is it? And starting with the term internet, if you really know about the internet, what was it and how did it all start? So, in the beginning, it was not used for the purpose the way we are using it. It was used for the American defense was using it, and it was ARPA, Advanced Research Projects Agency Network. That was the ARPANET. Then later, it was so successful, then they thought it should be used by everyone, and this is how it all started. So this was a very brief discussion, how did it all start. Now you can see the personal computers, the ones that we use, PCs, which we call them. The beginning was in the beginning there was no concept of the use of computer by general people, but since the introduction of PCs, personal computers in 1980s, there's a there's a very great change, or you can say advancements in the computer technology. People are using it. It has become very popular. Then it was introduction of LANs in the beginning. In the beginning, it was the computers were connected with each other in a small geographic area, and later they expanded into WANs that was spread over a large geographic area. And in between, we talk about the term MAN also, Metropolitan Area Network, which is within a city and which is bigger than LAN and smaller than WAN. But we talk about in between the city, like for example, if I am in one city and you are in the same city, then we can say it is Metropolitan Area Network or MAN. And if you are in a different city or country, or you're in a different continent, then that is considered to be WAN or Wide Area Network. One of the very important topics that you need to prepare for your exam is the benefits and drawbacks of networking the computers. So let me highlight the key things that you need to know so that you can prepare it for your exams. First thing is, what are the benefits of networking computers? So main benefits of networking the computers, and then the drawbacks. Now I'll just highlight the keywords. Main thing is, why do we create a network? We create a network because we want to connect the printers, we want to connect the devices, we want to share the data and the files, we want to access the data that is stored in a file server, and the data since the data is backed up, so it can be accessed by everyone, and we don't have to worry at all about the backing up the data. And then another very important advantage of networking is communication. So let me highlight the keywords. The first keyword is devices such as printers can be shared, and this results in reducing the costs. Then rather than buying the individual computers, what we can do is if we buy the license to run software on networks that is much, much cheaper than using it for standalone computers. So licenses to run software is going to be cheaper as compared to buying the license for standalone computers. Thirdly, sharing of the data in the files. That is another very important advantage. Then you can see access to reliable data that comes from a central source such as a file server. So all the data is stored on a file server. So that is also a very big advantage of storing the data and networking the computer systems. Data and files can be backed up centrally at the end of each day. That means we don't have to worry at all about the security of the data because the data is backed up. Users can communicate. Now, right now, we are able to communicate because of the network. And we can say, I'm sending a message through email or I'm sending a message. This all is possible. And then a network manager can oversee the network and, for example, apply access rights to certain files. This is something that you will come across a number of times also. A network manager can oversee the network and apply access rights. So if you say, I have different people who are working in the organization, and these people are working at are having different roles to perform. So definitely not every person will be getting access to each and everything. So this is possible in a network that we can apply or restrict, or we can give or revoke the different, can say, different rights to the people based on their role or based on their role in the network or maybe in the office. Along with the benefits, there are certain drawbacks. The first drawback, as you can see, it's expensive. Expensive initially because you need to buy the equipment, you need to have the cables, etc. So setting up is going to be an expensive job. Managing a large network can be complex and difficult. Now, this is another disadvantage, or you can say a limitation, that managing is a difficult task. Then a breakdown of devices such as the servers can affect the entire network. So basically, not the maybe the network, if you talk about the computers, if they have develop some problems, then maybe that will not be too problematic. But when the main server has developed some fault, then it results in the whole network being affected. Last but not the least is malware and hacking, which we always are, can say, afraid of. So mainly expensive. Managing the network is going to be complex and difficult and expensive too. And then the breakdown of the devices, like the servers, are going to be problematic. And lastly, it will be the problem of malware and hacking. So I hope that there is no question before I proceed to something else. Okay, now moving to the next one, we have the hardware, and we'll talk about the hardware components, and very quickly we'll talk about the hardware requirement. So definitely network computers need some specialized hardware, and along with that they need specialized software also, and then they are providing different services. So very quickly going through LAN cards, routers, switches. I need wireless routers or cabling as a hardware component that is needed for networking the computers. For software, we need the operation of firewalls, we need security applications, utilities, and it is providing certain services. Moving to private networks. Now, networks can be categorized as private or public. The one that is owned by a single company or organization is private, and the one that is owned by a communication carrier like the telecom companies are the public networks. So you must have heard about the people talking about the public networks. So as the name public means available to everyone because it is not owned by a single company or by a single resource. And when it comes to this one, it is going to be owned by different, like private is owned by the company and public is owned by the governments basically. Now, next one is WANs and LANs. If you get a question that deals with difference between LAN and WAN, she'll simply talk about LANs are contained within a building or within a small geographic area. Now, let me talk about if they ask you to explain LAN, then they want you to, this term is underlined. This term, like talking about the term small geographic area. A small geographic area is the main thing that you can see. Lands are usually contained within a building or within a small geographic area. That will give you definitely 1 or 2 marks. What is it composed of? It consists of a number of computers and devices connected to each other through hubs or switches. And then when you talk about if I want to connect this LAN to a WAN, then I need the services of a router or a modem. So this is the simple thing that you need to write about in order to score decent marks about LAN. LAN is consisting of a number of computers and devices, which can be hubs or switches. And if you want to connect this LAN to WAN, a wide area network, then you need definitely some more devices, like you need router or modem. So I think we are clear about this. Now, wireless LANs is basically similar to LANs, only the difference is there are no wires or there are no cables. They're connected to each other through some wireless means, and like maybe they are using radio waves, or they are using infrared signals instead of the cables. So if they ask about WLANs, then you simply have to mention similar to LANs, except for there are no wires or cables and they're connected through radio or infrared signals. Now, along with that, we talk about the term WAP also. Devices known as WAP, wireless access points, are connected into the wired network at fixed locations. Now, what is it? Because of the limited range, most commercial LANs, such as those on a college campus or at an airport, need several WAPs or wireless access points to permit uninterrupted wireless communication. So, as the name implies, this question has come, I guess, once in the paper, talking about the explanation of this WAP. And WAPs use either spread spectrum technology, which is a wide band radio frequency with a range from a few meters to 100 meters, or infrared. So this is what you can know, that WAPs are permitting uninterrupted wireless communication, and they are either using spread spectrum technology or they are using infrared technology. So if you just mention that, that is going to be like definitely enough for you to gain the marks regarding WAP also. Now, what is WAP doing? WAP is receiving and transmitting data between WLANs and the wide network. So you can see the position of WAPs is present in this network. This is your network that is composed of a cable. And at different positions, there are WAPs that are being placed so that communication can take place uninterrupted, so that it can like help in maybe accessing those places which are not accessed easily due to different reasons. Next is the wide area network, and as the name implies, as we talked about, it's going to be the wide area networks are used when computers are situated at a long distance from each other. Like the way I said, when it is spread over a large geographic area, then we talk about WANs or wide area networks. And you can see if the number of LANs are joined together using a router, then they can also form a WAN. Like maybe we have smaller LANs, we want to connect them together. So then we can use WAN, and that is also one of the definitions of WAN. So you can see WANs means they are spread over a large geographic area, the way we highlighted small. Similarly, here you can highlight the term wide area for large geographic area. And you can even mention if a number of LANs are joined together using a router, they can also form a WAN. So this will definitely give you definitely some marks. Number of LANs joined together using router or modem, they can also form a WAN. Network of automated teller machines or ATMs used by banks is one of the most common examples of the use of a WAN. So they have given you a very simple example, the ATMs which we see quite often everywhere. So since ATMs are connected to the main server, to the main computer system, there is a server, and they may be positioned at different locations, and they are forming a WAN. So what are the WANs mainly making use of? Because of the long distances between devices, WANs usually make use of a public communication network such as telephone lines or satellites. So we are going to talk about this inshallah later also in the chapter. But this is what you need to know, that WANs are basically using public communication, which is basically your telephone network, or they are using the satellite communication. But they can use dedicated or leased communication lines, which can be less expensive and more secure because of not having the problem of being hacked. So this is a very comprehensive discussion about WANs, and the number of the number of points that you will write is based on the number of marks. I've talked about everything. You remember about large geographic area, you remember about lands joined together to form a bigger WAN, that's going to be correct. Can even talk about that it is making use of public communication networks like the telephone lines, that's also going to give you marks. And using a dedicated lease communication line for security, that is also going to give you marks. So some decent marks are going to be gained, inshallah, if you are paying attention to these things. Just for like the purpose of information, I'm sharing with you that this is what is the norm. That we talk about the size of the network. WAN means 100 kilometers to over 1,000 kilometers. MAN, metropolitan area network, is 1 kilometer to 100 kilometers. LAN, which is the most commonly used one inside an organization, is 10 meters to 1,000 meters or 1 kilometer. And PAN, personal area network, is something that is not a commonly used term, but that is going to be from 1 meters to 10 meters. Mostly the people who are in a at home, like they form a PAN or personal area network. Now, this was again the second topic that we need to prepare for our papers, a very important one, talk about LANs and WANs. Then we are moving to client server and peer-to-peer. Okay, now just try to understand the concept, and questions are coming in different styles. So you need to be very clear about, and then I'll give you a brief hint of the questions also. Now, as the name implies, client means the one that is asking for the resources, and server, which is giving the resources. So this is the diagram that you can see here. The server is positioned at a distant location, and through internet, all the connected computers or the clients are accessing that particular server. And you can see here they have drawn a desktop here, they've drawn a laptop here, and they have drawn a tablet here. So all these are accessing the server through the internet. Like for example, if I am using my mobile phone and I'm accessing maybe some of my bank information. So that is again, I'm a client server. I'm a part of the client server model. So just be clear about this whole process, that what is happening. The client is sending a request to the server, and the server is finding the appropriate data that it can send back to the client so that it can be able to service this. Now, what is the server doing? A system administrator is managing the whole network. Clients are connected through a network, allows data access even over long distances. Like maybe I am in some other city and maybe my account is in some other city, and I am able to access my bank resources, my bank information, because of me being a part of the client server model. So that is the minimum thing that you need to know. And then when do we go for client server? Just talk about the main thing. Whenever security is my major concern, and if the number of terminals are spread over a large area, then client server is the best option. So you can see what is the, again, I'm highlighting the few key points. I hope that we have understood the basic idea about client server. Client asking for the resources and server is giving the resources. Client server model uses separate dedicated servers and specific client stations. Client computers will be connected to the server computers. So basic thing is the client computers are connected to the server in the client server model. Users are able to access most of the files which are stored on dedicated servers. So access most of the files stored on the dedicated servers. So basically, the servers are storing all the data, and the clients, as the name implies, are simply getting the data from there. Server dictates which users are able to access which files. Again, this is a repetition of the advantage of creating a network that we talked about. Who has access to what? That is what is dictated by the client server model. And then client server model allows installation of software into a client's computer. Model uses central security. The biggest advantage of using this client server model is managing the central security. And because of this, only the people who have the right ID and password are able to access the network. Fine. Now, once a user is logged into the system, they will have access to only those resources such as printer and files assigned to them by the network administrator. So here the role of an network administrator is prime one. Whatever he offers, the security, only the people are able to access that one. Now, this is the repetition. That is why I'm not highlighting this. Once a user is logged into the system, they will have access to only those resources to which they have access. Client server networks can be as large as you want them to be, and they are much easier to scale up than peer-to-peer. Adding up computers in a client server model is much easier as compared to any other network. A central server is looking after the storage, retrieval, and everything. Like everything is happening through the central server. So that is the main resource that is giving you the benefit of storage, and it gives you the access of the stored data also. Model offers the most stable system. For example, if someone deletes a shared resource from the server, then definitely the backup is going to be there. So I'm just highlighting again a keyword backup here. Because of the backup, you can simply do not need to worry about it, because the backup would be there to help you in restoring all your work. As compared to a peer-to-peer model, client-server networks can become bottlenecked if there are several client requests at the same time. Now, this debating a bit, if you remember the distributed denial of service attack. So this is happening because of unnecessary traffic being generated. Otherwise, the servers are good enough to handle a good amount of network resource that they are getting. Now, in this is just the basic thing that we need to know. Only in some situations, when there's too much of the network traffic, only then the servers will stop responding to the requests. Otherwise, they are well trained enough, or they have enough resources to service a large number of computer requests. In the client server model, a file server is used and is responsible for central storage. Acha, now I'm just highlighting the term file server, and just to make you understand that this is what the job of a file server is. So if they talk about the file server, this is what you will write. It's management. It's there to perform central management and storage of data files, thus enabling other network users to access the files. It is allowing users to share information without the need for offline devices, allowing a computer system to be configured as a host machine and access as a file server. And then other computers can be connected to them as a client. So a file server, as the name implies, just like the web server or the email server or the print server, its job is restricted to only the management storage of the files, because the other network users are able to access those files that are present in the file server. So just maybe, I mean, we can get any questions. So just to be very clear, we have to be very clear that what the questions, how questions can come in the paper. Again, a repetition, so I'm not moving to that one. You can go through that yourself, talked about earlier. Whenever there is a large number of computer systems or a large number of people who need to connect, then the best model that we prefer is a client server model. I mean, we prefer to have a client server model in that case. So you can see here, the company has a large user base. They will go for a client server model. Access to network resources needs to be properly controlled. Then we go for a client server model. When we need good network security, then we go for a client server model. So these are the basic reasons for moving to a client server model. Using a large user base, you can say the access to network resources needs to be properly controlled. Then you also go for the client server model. Need for good network security, then you go for a client server model. And the company requires its data to be free from accidental loss, then you also go for the client server model. So these are the four main points that you need to be very clear about. If they ask you about, like, I'm just giving you this idea so that if the question comes in the paper in any form, then maybe it is going to be like this, that they have given you both the client server and the peer-to-peer options, and they're asking you to justify your answer. Then you should be very clear that if my major concern is security, if my major concern is I don't want it to be can say accidentally lost, or if there is a large number of computer systems which need to be connected, then in that case, client server is the best option. So this is why I'm highlighting the key terms for you to remember in order to frame a very good example. They have quoted the example of Amazon, definitely a very huge example. Next one is a peer-to-peer. Before I move to this explanation of this peer-to-peer model, let's talk about one term that we all should be clear about, and that is a node. And this node is with respect to the networking. In a network computer system, every single device that occupies a connection in the network is called a node. It can be a computer, it can be even a printer, just be very clear about. So then when we say in a peer-to-peer network, each node means every single device. It does not imply only a computer. It means every single device. It can be a printer to be very clear about. On a peer-to-peer network, what is happening? Each node joins the network to allow what is happening. If main thing is if the number of PCs is smaller, like maybe 10, because peer-to-peer is not going to go beyond 10, then we go for a peer-to-peer network. When security is not our major concern, then we go for a peer-to-peer network where we need to access and give. Like no one is superior, no one is inferior. Everyone is giving as well as getting. Then we go for a peer-to-peer. So just be clear. then if they ask you a question, you should be very clear about that peer-to-peer is the required model to be used when you have a limited number, like maybe 10, maximum 10. Then secondly, your major concern is not the security, then you go for a peer-to-peer network. And thirdly, when everyone is giving as well as receiving, yes, if it has some resources, it will be sharing its resources, and whenever it needs the resources, it will be getting the resources. Then we go for a client server model. Are you clear about this? Sorry, we are going to go for a peer-to-peer model. Now, what is it? Just the key terms again highlighted for you. Provision of services to all other network users. The services available are listed on a nominated lookup computer. When a node requests a service, the lookup computer is contacted to find out which of the other network nodes can provide the required service. That is what? Just the introduction of one lookup computer that is going to hold, like, just like, maybe assume it just like a person was just holding that different students have different information. So this is what it will be holding. So whichever computer wants whichever file or whichever resource, the lookup computer will be able to direct, that's all. Okay. Other users on the network simply access data from another node. So you can see here all the computers are able to access the other users on the network to simply access data from another node. Communication with other peers is happening. Every computer is connected with the other one. Let me show you the diagram once again to make the concept a little clearer. You can see it's simply a sort of all the connected computers. Like if you see this computer, it is connected to, if you see the diagram, it's connected to this computer, all the computers, like it is not connected with any one, it's connected through a wire to all the connected computers. So this is why you can see that it is able to access if it knows that where the resource is. Peers to be both suppliers and consumers. This is the most important thing. So I'm highlighting it with a different color. This is the most important thing. Peers to be both suppliers and consumers, unlike the client server model. Okay. Peers to participate as equals on the network. No one is superior, no one is inferior. That's what I said in the beginning. This is different from the client server model. And you can see here, again, a comparison. A comparison can also come in the paper. So from here, you can very easily make a comparison that first thing is all are equal, both are suppliers and consumers. They are able to participate as equal in the network. And thirdly, the number of connected computers and security. So I hope that this is going to give you a very clear idea that how you can frame your answer if they ask you about the differences between client server and peer-to-peer. Peer-to-peer model does not have a central server. Like now, let me highlight this also. Does not have a central server. Each of the nodes or workstations on the network can share its files with other nodes, and each of the nodes will have its own data. Because there is no central storage, there is no requirement to authenticate the users. Now, this is another no authentication. Like just like the client server, we had talked about that every single person has an ID of the password. This is not the case here. The model is used in scenarios where no more than 10 nodes are required. Now, this is again a very important thing. No more than the thing that I talked about. So I think this is very clear. No more than 10 network nodes are required. For example, a small business. In a small business where everyone is equal, no one is superior, no one is inferior, everyone is simply getting the resources and giving the resources, then they will be leading to a peer-to-peer network. The moment security becomes a major concern, then the best option is your client server model. Another one is more than 10 nodes. And okay, why 10? Why not more than 10? Because more than 10 nodes leads to performance issues and management issues. That's why peer-to-peer is restricted to only 10 nodes. That is, again, are you clear about this whole thing? Any questions till now? Yeah, children, any questions? Okay. Peer-to-peer offers little data security. There is no central security system. Again, I'm highlighting this key term, although we have talked about this, but just to no central security system. This means that it is impossible to know who is authorized to share certain data. Users can create their own network shared points, which is the only real security aspect. I mean, up to them, but otherwise, this is not the requirement that there should be some central PC just managing all the resources. Examples, again, repetition. The network of users is fairly small. There is no need for robust security. They require workstation-based applications rather than server-based application. Again, a repetition. So I'm just moving ahead to the next term, that is thin client and thick client. So now thin client and thick client, again, a very important thing. What is thin client? A thin client is dependent completely on access to the resources, to the server. If server is not there, the thin client is not able to do anything. So it is always completely reliant on the server. If server isn't there, then the thin client isn't active. Examples include, now let's talk about the thin client. It will not work if the server isn't there. Thin client includes software. If you say software, example of thin client is a browser, and then talking about the POS terminal is the hardware example, and even the example of ATM. So these are the examples that you need to know in order to work on a thin client. Software example would be a web browser, hardware example will be POS terminal or ATM, and they are needed because they are needing constant access to the web server. Web server is not there, they are simply useless. And thick client, as the name implies, is the one that is available to me. Like I can, like right now, for example, I'm connected to the network. I'm a part of the network. Perfect. I can also be, if I'm not connected, for example, if I'm talking about the uh, I'm not connected to the network. I can still work on my laptop. You can still work on your device. That is your thick client. That is the difference between a thick client and a thin client. So again, a question can come in the paper. You should be very clear about this thick client and thin client. Heavily dependent on the web sources. If it's not connected, it is useless. That is your thin client. If it can work on its own, intelligent enough to handle its own resources, having its own memory, having its own everything, that will be your thick client. And the best example is what we use. Our computer system is the best example of a thick client. So are you clear about this? If it comes in the paper, at least you are able to answer. Now, pros and cons, robust, now thick clients, more robust devices, thin clients, clients have more control in case of your clients. I being a thick client have more resource control as compared to the thin client. Less secure because it is relies on the clients to keep their own data secure. Each client needs to update data and software individually. Data integrity issues are going to be there in the thick client. Thin clients are less expensive to expand. All devices are linked to the server. Server can offer protection against hacking and malware. Hard lines in the servers. If the server goes down, there is a breakdown in the communication link. Despite cheaper hardware, the startup costs are generally higher. So this is a very brief discussion of the topic. And then thin client software and thick client software. What is it? Always relies on the connection to a remote server or computer for it to work. Think of a web browser. When we talk about thin client software, think of a web browser. Always relies on a connection to a remote server or computer for its work, requires very few local resources, relies on a good, stable, and fast network connection. Data is stored on a remote server or the computer, just like the web browser. And thick client is can run some of the features of the software even not connected to a server. Any device, even you talk about MS Word. Just to give me an example, relies heavily on local resources, more tolerant of a slow network connection, can store data on local resources such as hard drive or SSDs. So was a brief discussion about this whole topic, and then we are going to continue with topologies, etc. So be stay tuned, and we are going to work on the next one also. Allah Hafiz for the time being.